Hey, my name is Alec Wenzel, and I'm a professional guitar player from Denver, Colorado. And today I'm doing a video that's sort of my response to the Dipped in Tone podcast from about a week and a half ago, where Rhett Shull and Zach Broyles from Mythos Pedals get a Reverb.com analyst on, where they sort of talk about sales trends for the, gear community for the last year and on Reverb.com. And one of the interesting things that came out on that podcast was that tube amps were not in the top 20 amps sold that year. And we don't see a tube amp until you get to the 22nd most sold amp on Reverb, which was the AC-15. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole, is this right or wrong debate, right? Why are people buying modelers? It's bad for the amp industry. It's making things more expensive and less accessible. I already agree with all that, right? I understand why people get modelers, but, tube amps are simply a better option, and digital has not yet caught up. That doesn't mean that, the HX Stomp or a Quad Cortex isn't a tool for a job. I love my HX Stomp. I have to use it a lot because I'm required to play silent stages for events and for, certain wedding situations. It just sort of is what it is. I don't have a lot of control over that. But I have some clips today to hopefully show you why amplifiers simply are better. And I had this experience that inspired me to make this video this past weekend when I played the Andy Sito album release show here at the Bluebird Theater in Denver. It was an awesome show. I'll post a picture. It was really great. I loved it, and we're flying out next week to Nashville to start tour, which I'm very, very excited about. But on that stage, everybody was using real amps, right? Real instruments, and you can feel the sort of power of that. And then the following morning, I went and saw a show, and as a listener saw a band who was using all modelers on stage, and it just felt really unnatural. And just the juxtaposition of those two experiences really made me want to make this video and share some of that stuff with you. So I'm gonna play a video clip from the Andy Sito album release show. It'll be our second song, and you can watch me comically turn the camera on with seconds to go right before we get into Keep On Driving. And what I want you to really pay attention to, and this is why the amplifiers and the acoustic instruments are a better option, is not only the presence of the stage sound, the thump that you're getting, the physicality of moving air with amplifiers that is so important. It is also our ability to control dynamics, right? So this is going to be 1 minute and 50 seconds of playing, and you're going to hear us hit it really hard on the intro, and then come down for the first verse, go back up for the chorus, and then come down just for the beginning of the second verse. And that hopefully shows you like that sort of dynamic response that we can kind of get. But yeah, let's jump into that. I'm gonna play that, and then we'll come back and talk about it. And then I'll talk about my experience with seeing the band who's using all modelers the next morning. And I'll sort of give you some examples and diagrams. I can't really play their performance. It's not my place to. But after you hear this clip, hopefully you will understand what I'm talking about when I show you some of the diagrams in the next section. All right. Here's the very beginning to Keep On Driving.
People
So coming back, I know that was just undoctored iPhone audio quality, and it'll sound varying degrees of good or bad on whatever you're listening to. But hopefully what you were able to hear there is just sort of like how everything was pumping together. The sound is originating from a source on stage, and it's happening at the same time, so we're really able to take advantage of that blend, right? And that blend is important because that's also what allows us to craft a dynamic experience, right? To move the energy of the song up and down in verses and choruses to, you know, like help the audience feel lifted and, you know, also brought back. And you don't really get that with a modeler because, you know, when you're playing through a modeler, all of that sound is just coming from the front of the stage, right? It's not coming from a central location where people are communicating. It's just all 100% in the hands of the sound guy, and, you know, it's just going for as balanced a response as you can get. But it's nothing compared to when you can really communicate with the musicians on stage and move air together and really get that physical sort of pump to it, that physicality of moving air that I sort of described a little bit earlier. I'm gonna play one more clip. It's of the solo section where Andy and I kind of do a line and then I play a lead. And it's great too because you can really hear us go from height of volume, screaming lead, to all the way down to bare bones again. But if you want to skip it and move on to the next section, I won't blame you. So here's that little solo section too. Alright, so again, hopefully in that clip you were able to see how we were again blending on stage together and hearing each other and able to go from a really high volume lead sound all the way back down to something really dynamic and quiet for the, you know, third verse there. But getting into this next section, the next morning, like I said, went and saw a band that, you know, has 1.1 million listeners on Spotify. They're huge, and they were using 100% modelers on stage. And this is where things get weird, right? Because you're 100% in the hands of the sound guy. And they may or may not know your solo sections, they may or may not know your quiet sections, but they're what is determining that dynamic feel. When everything is coming from speakers in front of the stage and you are behind it, that means you're not working together with the sound person, right, to craft a very full sound that's filling the room. You are only getting whatever the sound guy thinks should be happening out front, and that creates kind of a delay in sort of a response to your ability to shape that sound, shape that dynamic. And an example of this is when I was listening to that band was that when the guitar player would go to take a solo, you would hear him step out and start trying to solo, and the volume wouldn't come up until a few seconds into that performance. And this was sort of, you know, like a poppier band, sort of a pop punk sound, and you're not getting a long solo to develop an idea. You've only got a few seconds to make that melody happen, and, you know, those seconds are precious when you don't have control over it and it's such a short moment. And so having the sound guy determine whether or not that's getting heard is always going to be a disadvantage. And there were definitely elements that, like, I felt like I was missing as I was listening to it. The other disadvantage is that it creates a disconnect between things that are happening on stage. The drummer is not often going to be using a sample pad or an electronic drum kit. They're still going to play live acoustic drums. But what happens when, you know, that sound is not originating from one space altogether, right? There's the drummer who is behind the speakers playing their part, and then all the sound coming from the guitar player is separated out front. It means that it sounds like the drummer is playing over a backing track. And, you know, it creates this distance that isn't blending very well, and it's maybe not mixed in because of, you know, stage volume requirements. And so when I was listening to them play, it felt like I was hearing, you know, stuff coming at me out front, and then way behind that band there was a drummer kind of playing along. And this wasn't a, you know, bad performance. I wasn't, you know, upset or disappointed. They sounded great. It was a lot of fun. It was high energy, but it was just something that I kind of noticed with that modeling situation. This is just a listener perspective on what that sounded like to me as somebody in the audience who has experience on both sides of the, you know, modeling silent stage versus, you know, live full band situation. All right, so here's my, you know, dumb little diagram that I said I would make for you guys to sort of help us visualize what I'm describing in terms of this lack of blend and sound separation for a silent stage. And hopefully what you're seeing is that, like, you know, the band is positioned behind these speakers that are out front, and the sound is only coming from there, you know, and it's focused in a direction, right? That's something that we don't often talk about when, you know, we're like talking about modelers versus amps on stage, is that sound is much more directional coming out of a, you know, PA speaker than it is sort of like out of an amplifier, because out of an amplifier, sound is coming out the back of the amplifier, and it's coming out the front where the speaker is, because it's echoing around inside of a box, right? That's what your amp is. It's a, you know, projector essentially. So all that sound is coming out of the very front of the stage, and then the drummer's sound is following that sound. That's the only sort of omnidirectional sound, and it's competing with something that's very directional. And so it doesn't create as full of a sound or a blend. It doesn't allow for the same sort of like dynamic feel. Now here's my second stupid little diagram of what it looks like when amps are playing on stage. And when amps are playing on stage, we've got like a lot more fullness because those amps are sending sound all over the place, right? And it's a real physical sound, right? Because we're hearing it from on stage and it's traveling out towards the audience. And then the sound person is helping to blend that and expand that sound using the PA instead of making the PA 100% of what you're hearing. And, you know, it creates that just bigger, you know, more omnidirectional full sound for the entire venue. And it, you know, sort of envelops the listener in a little bit better way, in my opinion. All right, coming out of that diagram section, hopefully my bad drawings helped you visualize a little bit of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a stage with modelers versus a stage with real amplifiers. But I just wanted to take this moment to say, like, I don't hate modeling amps, right? Like, I love my HX Stomp, but I only use it when I have to, because hopefully what you're seeing is that there is a real trade-off between, you know, using an amp on stage and using a modeler, right? Modelers are very cool, and again, I use them a lot. But the idea that they're this perfect answer to tube amps and that we can all throw away those heavy boxes filled with magnets and wires just isn't the case. You know, there's a real trade-off, and the amp has a serious advantage in a live performance. All right, so getting into this outro, again, my name is Alec Wenzel. I'm a professional guitar player from Denver, Colorado. And if you've watched this far, please give me a quick like on the video and subscribe to my channel and maybe leave a comment, because I do love talking to you guys. It's a lot of fun for me to answer those questions after on some of those videos. But it's free to you and it means the world to me, so please subscribe. It really helps me out. I'm trying to grow the channel. But yeah, hopefully what this showed you was that while there are advantages to modelers, and again, I love them for recording in specific situations, but as far as live performances go, you know, the amplifier is still king on stage. It's still the best option for getting a very dynamic performance that feels like there's power on stage and like it's blending well with a live band. And I think it's important. It's becoming a little bit of a lost art, so I'm being a little bit of an amp evangelist here and hoping I'll convert anybody who's listening and is willing to try picking up an amplifier. But again, my name is Alec Wenzel. Please check out my other videos on the HX Stomp and amp comparisons. They're linked down below in the description and on screen here. But until then, I'll hopefully have some more videos up for you before I go on tour. And I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion today and enjoyed some of the guitar playing. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you a little bit later. Thanks so much. Bye.